Greetings, everyone, and I apologize for the delay, but we are now calling our meeting to order for today. We'd like to welcome everyone to the African American Equity Restoration Task Force November meeting. I would like to ask Tiffany to call the roll, please.
Thank you. All right. So we have Mr. Matthew Best, Ms. Tanisha Fitzgerald-Baker,
Present.
Mr. Brandon Harding,
Present.
Ms. Lynn McKenzie, Mr. Dave Miller,
Here.
Dr. Bill Lyons,
Here.
Anderson Olds, Mr. Gina Olam, Deborah Porter, here, Mr. Stanley Taylor,
Here.
and Mr. George DeWitt.
Here.
Great. We do have one.
All right, great. And I did get a message from Gwen. I believe she's at an Urban League meeting and she will be coming right now. If I could get a motion, if you all had the opportunity to read the minutes from our last meeting, if we could get a motion to approve if there are no questions or edits.
So moved. Second.
And we'll jump right into.
I told her to pass.
We have a motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Thank you all. All right, so now we will jump right into our staff report, please.
Right. So hi everyone. It's so great to see your smiling faces. It's been a month. I can't believe it. I wanted to give you all a few updates. Like you can hear me a little bit right now. Here we go. Okay. So, quick little summary. Tiffany Davidson and I concluded our initiative with the National League of Cities for the Southern Cities of Economic Inclusion cohort. So that cohort that we've been traveling to these past 2 years almost, to get more information in the lay of the land regarding equity for the South and how we can continue to build that. So we actually had our last meeting in Atlanta, what was that? A month ago, yeah, about a month ago. The really great thing about the trip there in particular was that we got to speak to a few philanthropic foundations. So it was really great to be able to present the task force in front of some really big name organizations and foundations, including, but not limited to, the Kresge Foundation, the Kellogg Foundation, along with the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, just to name a few. So that was really great. Still, hear more about the philanthropic process and how even what their internal regulations look like regarding the foundations and philanthropic dollars that they provide. So that was really cool to see how we can align our vision and vision of the task force with some of the national foundations that do exist. So that was really, really cool. We were also celebrating our last meeting over at the Met Cultural Center for the site visit that we hosted with the National League of Cities. Apparently, that was one of the best. Yeah, out of our 14 cities, other sister cities in our cohort, we were actually acknowledged as one of their favorites. And so I actually got to share a little bit and kind of teach the other folks how to do it right. So that was really great. Other things. So I wanted to give you all a quick update regarding some of the numbers that I've shared with you previously. So I have been working with Knox Planning. We'll actually at our next meeting have one of the representatives kind of give more of a breakdown. I didn't actually bring the numbers here today because I wanted to go through those a little bit more in depth at our next meeting. And so she'll be presenting to you all kind of how we went about getting those numbers to back the framework that is in front of you all. So, you know, as we know, a lot of times with this work in equity, it's very important to not only be able to tell a strong story, but also to have the numbers to back it. And so that's what I've been spending a lot of my time doing, and I'm excited to be able to present that to you all in our next meeting. That concludes my side.
All right, so members of the task force, I believe, participated in their respective committee meetings or their committees to discuss a draft of the strategic plan, which I think many of us were together to look at that first draft, and it was in good shape. I think there were a couple of suggestions, but further information will be discussed during the business section of our meeting. And so before we get into that, we have some guest speakers. I believe we have a couple on the agenda. Was someone representing Seed? No? All right. All right, then we have the City of Knoxville Office of Sustainability, please. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, sir. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Foster, Deputy Director in the Office of Sustainability. Happy to be with you all today, this evening, and I want to also introduce Alexandria Marcicolateri, who is a Harvard City Fellow, and she is here for us, I guess for 2 years. She's been here since last July, and it's been an honor to have her on board with us. And we're going to share 2 initiatives that City of Knoxville Office of Sustainability has been working with in order to lead various efforts on goals and objectives. One of them is our EV adoption and our acceleration of EV adoption throughout the city, throughout the community of Knoxville. When Tiffany first came to us, she had mentioned we do something about EV chargers in East Knoxville. I was like, that's not a good title, because one of the things that we're looking at is to be equitable throughout the whole community, the whole city of Knoxville. So I just wanted to share that, and Alex will be talking about our Vision Zero initiative, which is very important to us. And, you will hear from her talents and expertise and her educational background, how that complements what we're doing here to kind of move that city initiative forward. So thank you, Alex, for being with me today. So let's talk a little bit about EV, electric vehicle adoption goals. I know you all hear about that. First thing you want to say is, well, I can't afford an electric vehicle. I'm not here to sell the car. I'm just trying to really provide an opportunity, a way to let the community know how it benefits our goal in reducing greenhouse gas emissions throughout the community. So when we go back and look at 2008 and the goals that the City of Knoxville had set to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which we know are emissions that are really a leading cause of climate change. We looked at, and I'm not really showing any slides right now, I'm just showing the survey later on and maybe our equitable tools that we use to kind of deploy EVs. But when we looked at that, our first goal back in 2008 was to have a 20% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2020. We exceeded that goal for the city, for city operations. We exceeded that goal, and that kind of led the charge for city council to adopt unanimously other goals for us. I've got to get these numbers right. 50% by 2030 greenhouse reduction goals, and then 80% greenhouse reduction goals by 2050. Now the 2030 goals, that 50% by 2030 is for city operations, which we can kind of contain because we're looking at city facilities, city buildings, city fleet, things that we have control of. But when we look at the 80% by 2050, that involves the community. We're talking about community emissions. A lot is going, we have a lot going on as far as development, economic development, thriving. More visitors in the area, population has grown, so that kind of impacts what we can do as a community. So it's our goal to educate the community as a whole, to let them understand the community benefits of our, to reduce greenhouse reductions. If you look at the transportation aspect of it, we go back and, I'll back up a little bit. In 2011, we had a sustainability work plan, which kind of identified how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the city. That kind of led the charge for our Mayor's Climate Council, to identify some strategies that work in Knoxville. One of those things that came out of that was the recommendation to update that work plan. So I don't have that booklet with me. I think it's in my bag, but the 2021 Sustainability and Work Plan and recommendations from the Mayor's Climate Council helped us to identify strategies based on sectors, building, efficiency, transportation, and kind of outline the sectors to kind of help us reach those 2030 and 2050 goals. So when we looked at that, we noticed that transportation, the council decided that the transportation goals were the best goals to directly lower the greenhouse gas emissions. And when you think about it, you had, in 2019, we had a 59% greenhouse gas emissions due to travel within the interstate. In 2019, can you imagine traveling 4.52 billion miles in Knoxville? And this is what I was talking about in the office today. If you think about the center of Knoxville, I always say you can go 20 miles in each direction and be in another county here in Knoxville. So can you imagine 4.52 billion miles traveled in 2019 with emissions, greenhouse gas emissions from tailpipes, brakes, things like that. So that's why we wanted to develop a strategy. How do you go about reducing those greenhouse gas emissions? And one of those ways you think about it is, of course, yeah, you want to put everybody in public transit. That's an opportunity. These are just opportunities, but you have a reduction in tailpipes and brakes in that way. Improve your pedestrian bicycle connectivities to kind of make it multimodal and give folks that want to leave the car home the option. Moving on with those improvements as well. So those are examples of opportunities that you can provide to use that. And then having partners like CAT, Knoxville Area Transit, come on board to support the mayor's initiative by now having 12 electric buses in the fleet, going through your community very quietly, but also reducing those tailpipes and that exhaust if you're ever behind one. That exhaust that you usually take in on any day when you're traveling through the city. But this means a healthier, more resilient community for us, and those are what we want to look at. So the Mayor's Climate Council prioritized the acceleration of the adoption of vehicles through the community for a variety of benefits: lower emissions, fewer pollutants, air particulates, and also the other pollutants. And then the overall cost. Again, if you're comparing the cost to your oil change and tires, well, you're gonna have the tires, but the oil change and the cost of gasoline compared to electric vehicle, over the lifetime of that car, it will lessen. And then with the electric vehicles, the one that we use in the fleet, we know that we can fully charge that to about its goal of maintaining 225 miles. We can get to the city of Knoxville in a day. I remember having my van, and I could travel with 4 kids in my car, and it would be about 60 miles every day. I'm going from Carter High School on this end of East Knox County, going all the way over to the other end of West Knox County. And if you do that 3 or 4 times a day, you are utilizing about 100 miles, and that's where I'm sharing your vehicle, and a lot of gasoline. So it also has the priority to kind of reduce that use of imported fuels as well. So again, these are just some of the community benefits. But again, you get a healthier and cleaner community. So what is the city to do? What is the city doing as far as city fleet to adopt more electric vehicles? Well, we are continually introducing them into our fleet. These cars can drive, as I said, about 100 miles a day. So when our staff uses those, it reduces their carbon footprint as well, because they can charge their car up, it can go out and they can do their codes guys can go do their duties, the engineering guys can go, stormwater guys can go out in the field and do theirs. We use it on a daily basis when we go out for site visits, and we reduce our carbon footprint all around. And we're also introducing more electric vehicles. We have 7 ordered, 7 more coming. 2 F-150 Lightnings are on the way, not in my office, but they'll be there. But again, to reduce that greenhouse gas emission and help the city meet its goals of reduction by 50% by 2030. Now, when we look at public charging, we're pleased to say that we offer 31 L2 level 2 charging stations at 12 sites throughout the city. These are free to the public. A lot of these are in our parks or our parking garages. Some are available 24/7, but we've got but in our parks, I think it's a dawn to dusk hours. So if you're an EV driver looking for public charging free of charge, those you can check our website for those. And but overall, today's drivers can probably access about 50 public and private charging stations across Knoxville, and there's a website, a ChargePoint website, or you can visit our city website, sustainability webpage, to get those and click on the link, and it'll give you all the stations that are available for electric vehicles. But one of the things that we noticed, Knoxville is changing the way that we're looking to place our EV charging stations. We want to do it equitably and disperse them throughout the community as much as we can. What we've noticed too, you may be having interest in owning an electric vehicle, but you may live in an area or you may live in an apartment complex where your home can't accommodate that EV charger. So what do you do? So we're now looking at places where we can place those EV charging stations and have them available for the public. I know in some cities we have them connected to a light pole. I've seen that, and we're really talking about having a pilot to do that, and that's probably underway probably by next year. But a lot of times, off-street parking is available where we could put some of those EV charging stations in, so we're looking into that. But some drivers don't have the access via the garage or driveway to put those in. And so what we did, we developed a public survey, thanks to our Knox County planning folks that kind of helped us, and Alex, she helped kind of design our survey in order to get a better feel about what the public thinks EV charging stations should go. So I'm going to click on that, and we can pass those out to you. You can use the QR code. What we did is based on just to show you some of the opportunities and giving you the option to get on the site and just voice your opinion on where you think an EV charging station should go. So it asks, why do you select this location? A lot of times you have motorists or EV drivers would want somewhere nearby. They live here, they work here. The whole idea on a level 2, you can probably charge a couple of hours. Our level 2s for our fleet, they charge those all day, so it would be a great opportunity if you're driving an EV to kind of pull up to where you see a station, plug in, go to work, go to worship, go to dine, go to a theater, and then you come out. And so that's why we ask these questions. Reason for the location, the length of stay. You know, is it less than 30 minutes, or is it between an hour and 4 hours? And then if you have any comments. And then the zip code is just to kind of have a database on where we thought those were favorable. And if those zip codes fell outside the city limits, we let Knox County know that folks were interested. Again, maybe to create a partnership, but really to let them know as well that there's a need for EV charging stations in that location. The second thing we did a suitability map. I think I'll go back here. Is a suitability map, and we use the suitability map to help us be more cognizant of looking at disadvantaged communities and communities that were overburdened. And it gave us the opportunity to look at population density, housing density, car ownership, traffic, employment density, and community points as well, to see where we can identify underserved areas that we could better equip if they were to get an electric vehicle or if they had one that they needed for work or something like that. And it also helped us with grant applications as well. We had 2 grants that we actually used our suitability map for. Again, it fits the Justice 40 map to the Justice 40 initiative, because they also use tools like the climate environmental justice tool, and also the EJ mapping tool to look at different benefits and actually indicators to identify low income and disadvantaged communities. So we use those tools and use it in our grant applications. So that's all I have to share with you all today. Please take the survey. We would like to have your input on where you think EV charging stations would be favorable. And again, on the map, the darker the green is the more dense areas where you have overburdened communities. As you can see, some of that's downtown, some of that goes out toward East Knoxville. But we are looking at opportunities to, again, replace them in deserved neighborhoods and make it equitable across the community. Thank you. Sure.
You talked about city vehicles transitioning.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's pragmatic or not, I don't know if we have to talk about it or not. But what about like fire trucks? That's just as bad as
Yes.
or worse. And
So-
and more frequent.
Yes, so right now we're working with light duty, but we have had conversations with the fire department and the police department in regards to going electric.
Well, what's been the reaction? There's a.
Yeah, I think they're still thinking about it, and we're still in conversations.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I had a,
Sure.
can you, remind me, what's your position with the city?
Deputy Director, Office of Sustainability.
Okay. And thank you again for speaking with the task force.
Sure.
Just a few questions, and if you gotta get back to me, just let me know, but, I had a question about the locations. Was it tied to city-owned property, or was there a partnership with businesses to be able to put those stations in different locations in the city? My other question was primarily, where was the funding site to provide these stations? And also, I guess the third part, and we'll follow up is, since it's reducing of greenhouse emissions, has there been any research on how additional EV vehicles would affect the city grid and the ability of TVA providing additional electricity, and what emissions would they be using to offset the vehicles that would be taken off the road, the classic combustion engines were taken off the road in Knoxville. So those are my questions.
Those are great questions, and yes, what I failed to mention is that one of the things when we did with our suitability map were city locations. As for example, there's a EV charging station out in Burlington. We had the opportunity to place that there within the city right away with city funds. We have our capital funds that we've allocated to provide that, and our facilities team had placed that. And when we looked at our grant, we did a charging and fueling infrastructure grant. One of the opportunities we did when we used our suitability map was look at those disadvantaged communities and found nearby city locations that we could easily house that on instead of going through acquisitions and property acquisitions with a private owner. There's an opportunity to do private partnerships, but it takes a little longer if we want to get these implemented and use these as a first tool. The other part of your question, I think the third part of your question, I'll go ahead and get back to you in regards to Grace Levine, who's not here, is our data analyst, and she is the mistress guru of that information. She provides us our data and tells us our savings and things like that. But we have a great partnership with KUB, and we have a good partnership with TVA, and when we do things that impact the meter, we usually have a conversation with them. But I will have to let you know what those regs are and how that changes. But I'm sure, our goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emission, but I understand how does it impact the grid overall, is the question.
And not only that, the additional, will this additional capacity on the grid affect the prices of the everyday citizens, especially our disadvantaged communities that we're targeting?
Right.
That's one of my concerns also.
That's a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Generally, what's the utilization of the chargers? Are they 80% of the capacity used? How much do they get used today?
The new one in Burlington, it gets used about maybe 50%. It started off very low. We had to end up talking to, get people more familiar with using that. We have some users that will we charge them and then actually go to the lunch house. And that's the whole idea of bringing a little bit of economic development, economic impact and investment into the community. So our thing for putting that in Burlington, we know we've got projects underway there and there's some growth there, and we wanted to go ahead and not exclude them, but go ahead and include them in this process while we're getting it underway.
So, thank you.
So, Alex.
Thanks, Mom. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for extending an invitation to us here tonight. Tonight, I will be speaking with you about Vision Zero. That's perfect. And to start off and kind of orient our conversation here together, just a brief agenda of giving you some more background on what Vision Zero is so that you can contextualize the latter half of our presentation tonight, which will be on progress and implementation, specifically around the action plan that, as you can see, was published in June. So I am going to start us off with a little game of higher or lower, and this is on a crash factor of speed. And I will contextualize this, I promise, but if you could give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down for if you think that this specific statistic, if it's higher or lower than 75% chance of survival. So do you think that a pedestrian hit by a vehicle traveling at 25 miles per hour has a higher or lower chance of survival than 75%? Seeing a lot of lowers. Surprisingly, it's higher. So we get an 89% chance of survival. Now a higher or lower for this statistic here, a pedestrian hit by a vehicle traveling at 45 miles per hour has a 40% chance of survival. Lower or higher? I'm seeing more of a mix here, and a lot of people's intuitions were affirmed in the sense that it is lower. This is actually part of our roadshow community engagement initiative around the Vision Zero action plan. So it kind of paints this picture of going against your intuition. 25 miles per hour, I mean, I think it's safe to say no one would want to be hit by a vehicle traveling at that speed, but an 89% chance of survival at that 25 miles per hour, just a 20 miles per hour difference has such a big change in the sense that we went from 89% chance at 25 to a 35% chance at 45. And this really emphasizes the importance of lowering those speed limits, even at that kind of lower range of 20 miles per hour there. So what does this have to do with Vision Zero? In 2021, Council passed a resolution for a Vision Zero goal, which in the action plan is to eliminate traffic deaths and serious injuries on city-controlled roads by 2040. Now, as it stands, the current data, this is on 4 years of data, not including COVID years, which were understandably just a little bit different and had some discrepancies. So the average is around 34 fatal crashes every year in the city of Knoxville. And our goal is to get that 34 to 0. And we recognize that it is an ambitious goal, but with this Vision Zero approach, that kind of turns the traditional paradigm on its head in the sense that it's a system of systems approach. So Vision Zero is actually a traffic safety umbrella for some other initiatives that you may be very familiar with, like Complete Streets, Slow Down in K-Town, law enforcement initiatives. This is really taking a very holistic approach from post-crash kind of care, as well as enforcement, engineering, community engagement. How can we bring all these players together to really begin to push the needle on an issue that is so tied within the fabric of a lot of different disciplines? And here is kind of to orient yourself on where Knoxville stands in comparison to some mid-sized city peers. So we ranked 25th most dangerous in 2020. This was a study done out of 172 cities, and for all modes of transportation per 100,000 residents. Now, as you can see, there are some bigger cities below, like Charlotte, Chicago, Raleigh, that we might be familiar with, that in Nashville that have that rank less dangerous than Knoxville. But as you can see, in terms of Tennessee and our big cities, we're kind of up there in that danger zone. And so that just, again, emphasizes the importance to our community of what a prevalent issue that this may be, that this is. And so to also show the fact that Vision Zero policies have resulted in an average of 32% reduction in traffic fatalities and a 29% reduction in bicyclist pedestrian fatalities over 5 years. So even though many cities are still trying to grapple with this issue of measuring impact, because these are newer initiatives, it's kind of hard to get what is the result of Vision Zero policies specifically on these reduction in traffic fatalities and serious injuries. But here is kind of an early study that gives us some pretty promising hope that implementing this in our community can have and really deliver on the goal to get closer to zero. And this all goes to say one life is one too many. That's what we're really centering this around, is the people, the families, the community of Knoxville that has been disrupted through the trauma of losing a loved one on the road. And we really want to prevent more stories and headlines such as these for the wonderful individuals in our community. So this is just a testament to them and kind of a moment to remember the people at the core of this initiative. And that brings us to the action plan. So the action plan is readily available on the City of Knoxville website. If you go to Vision Zero Knoxville, you'll be able to access this plan. There's also a regional plan from TPO, the Transportation Planning Organization, for a regional sort of plan that incorporates Knoxville's data. But the plan includes a high entry network map, and what a high entry network map is where the most severe crashes are occurring in Knoxville. That's what that maps out. And then we have crash profiles and countermeasures, which kind of tells you like what do those crashes look like? Is it typically in commercial areas? It's really getting to a profile of where these crashes happen, and countermeasures that are specific to those profiles. There are 30 strategies to get through. Do not worry, that will not be part of this presentation. But they are really interesting to read through if you would like to. And then there's priority actions that have come out in the last chapter of this plan that you can look through to see what is Knoxville thinking to do moving forward. This is an image of the high entry network. So 6% of the streets, the major arterials like Broadway and Kingston Pike, are the location of a highly disproportionate number of life-altering crashes and pedestrian cyclist fatalities. One thing too is to think about where do you build community in Knoxville, and do these areas intersect with your commute? For a lot of people, they do, and that might be in your day-to-day, year, week to week, whatever that may look like. But this is an issue that impacts all Knoxvillians. And so this Vision Zero is really taking not just neighborhood level sort of issues of like, oh, it would be great to have like some traffic calming here, though those are important issues. Vision Zero really prioritizes these areas where the most severe and disproportionate number of crashes and life-altering kind of fatalities are occurring. And this is a map to kind of show what we're thinking about in terms of how equity plays in. As we center the conversation around traffic risks, we understand that there are higher rates of traffic risks in certain areas of Knoxville due to other factors that are embedded in the social fabric and systemic inequities of history. And so we have this here using the USDOT's equity tool from the USDOT. We were able to create a map that identifies the disadvantaged areas in the city of Knoxville, and these are areas that are mapped on to really prioritize safety and safety for everyone, specifically those who have been disadvantaged by traffic risks historically. And I'm going to briefly go through this, not going to spend a lot of time on it so that we can get to the latter part of the presentation here, but I did want to just share some graphics on who is at risk. So as you can see, these are some of the big factors that emerged from the data with teen drivers, substance abuse, senior drivers, a specific type of vehicle, and mode of transportation with pedestrian and bicyclists. And then we were also attuned to the disproportionality in terms of which communities are affected disproportionately by the issue at hand. And all of this way of thinking about the problem is what we're kind of going to in terms of priorities. So really centering equity, identity, what these different things look like in the broader conversation of traffic safety in Knoxville. Now to transition to a little bit of what's been happening, we've had some internal workshops and monthly meetings with across 8 departments and offices in Knoxville. You can see them represented there in one of our strategic workshops. This has really been a wonderful way to see how departments work with one another, sharing progress updates, aligning messages and resources, identifying opportunities to collaborate and really advance these goals. And then we also initially held 9 workshops that reached 117 attendees across Knoxville, in addition to areas that Bike Walk Knoxville, one of our community partners, hosted on-street surveys. And right now we're in the process of doing roadshow workshops, so we thank you for allowing us to come here and speak with you all, because you're getting a little taste of what we're trying to share with the community and really center their feelings of safety in terms of their identity, their mode of transportation as a driver, a walker, a bicyclist in Knoxville. This is a little taste of the strategies that are presented in the plan, or strategies that Knoxville has done and is continuing to implement. So there is a vehicle speed limit policy that came out in 2022, where the city reduced the speed on unsigned streets to 25 miles per hour. As you can see from our little icebreaker, that does significantly lower the risk for crash severity and fatalities and serious injuries. Then we have some enforcement programs and approaches that are going on in terms of crash report analyses, a different approach too in terms of doing a roadway, segmenting the roads as well to kind of get around areas that might not be seen. So this is policy enforcement, and then we also have engineering strategies as well with the Complete Streets Ordinance. And here are some design solutions that can be considered depending on the type of issue that a street may see. And then finally, we're at the Safe Streets for All proposal, which the city submitted. And these are the 2 areas that are highlighted to really advance these 2 projects that are already on the map. North Broadway and Woodland Avenue and East Magnolia Avenue, in addition to some other projects that will help advance Vision Zero, because at the core of this, it's to ensure that no matter where positioned in Knoxville, you have a sense of safety as a driver, as a pedestrian, as a cyclist, and in all forms of ability as well and mobility. So that's really what Vision Zero centers around. And a community engagement component is to understand the community's perceptions of safety and also to help elevate community voice in these conversations and really inform the process moving forward. So I'd like to thank you all very much. Feel free to stay engaged. We are very excited and happy to talk to anyone and appreciate the great work that all of you are doing in the community as well. Yes, Dr.
Just one brief comment slash suggestion. I noticed in the map up there, it looked like Cumberland Avenue had, if you go back to the, looking where I think Cumberland Avenue is, I don't see any, it looks to me like there were no accidents during going through UT or no fatalities. So assuming that's the case, I wanted to make the point that Don, Michelle, and I worked when I was at the city, when we did Cumberland Avenue. I know some people don't like it, that's another conversation. One of its purposes was safety, or one of its goals was increased safety, because there were a lot of injuries and fatalities associated with the 4 lanes, no crosswalks, etc. So everything you had suggested out there actually was done on Cumberland to make it much more pedestrian friendly, and the results were a drastic reduction. So you've sort of got a case study of employing some of these that I would go ahead and make sure that, the last I looked, the serious accidents on Cumberland have been totally eliminated from 9 or 10 a year that were serious. So you're talking about a major difference because of the change in engineering infrastructure that are consistent with those that are part of Vision Zero. So if that's all the case, I think I'd mention that. Say we've had an unintentional, but pilot program to do some of these things that they do work.
Yes, that was actually in one of the road shows. So thank you for elevating that to this space because it is such a great success story about how safety can be improved through design and thoughtful policy. Another thing so I do want to clarify the kind of lines that you're seeing here they are indicative of where crashes occur, but these are the most the disproportionality in terms of where the most serious crashes are occurring. So I do want to clarify there may be crashes that are occurring in other areas of the map that are not highlighted by those lines. They're just not at a disproportionate rate. So these are where the most kind of accidents are occurring, but I do appreciate that point because I definitely think we could have seen a very different line in terms of Cumberland had that not.
And a lot of the initial designs on Magnolia went to this end too, with the design that was in the first 3 phases.
Yes, that's right.
Can you go back to your slide, life walking crashes in
Yes.
Memphis, worst Terry, North Carolina? So, how, that laundry list right now, how many have Vision Zero policies?
That is a wonderful question, and I'm going to look that up for you. I can tell you though off the bat, Charlotte has one. I'm almost certain Chicago does as well. And I know Raleigh, Durham has one, so I'll check on that. I'm gonna check on that for you.
If you could, please, city by city and maybe give it to me.
Absolutely. Thank you, that's a great question.
So a couple of questions, but while you're on this slide, and I was thinking about what might impact some of those cities have more use or reliability on public transportation. And I know that was mentioned as a strategy, and when I look at Chicago, New York, I mean, that might influence that, or it's more spacious, more rural, and not as congested. But my question in the strategies, and I didn't see it, but in some where you want to reduce the speed limit, the speed bumps. I've been wishing in some neighborhoods for some speed bumps where we have consistently high speed traffic. And in a neighborhood, you have kids walking from school, that type of thing. So I didn't know if that was a strategy anywhere.
It is in the plan, but I will say, note that the traffic calming program is currently on pause. Does anybody wanna?
So it is a very popular program, and we are in the process of discussing how to better resource that program. So right now we have a wait list. We currently have almost 40 projects in the queue and over 40 people on a wait list to even apply to have their traffic study. So it is something that, and that's more so for the neighborhood. So if you think about like in particular neighborhoods, so for, I think I'm still learning traffic lingo, so I may get this wrong. Obviously for like minor factors and things like that, that's a different process. But when we think about like our neighborhood streets, we are trying to figure out, and Vision Zero I think is a part of that, how we can identify ways to better resource that program to meet the demand, because the demand I think has far exceeded anything that anybody could expect. And we are also thinking about how to revision the process, because we are finding that sometimes the process gets a little bogged down once it gets past the concept plan level and neighborhoods having to discuss what they actually want, because everybody wants speed humps until it's time for speed humps, and then nobody know who wanted the speed humps.
What's the length? So how much time does it typically take from request to?
It just depends, honestly, on, like I said, like engineering in a typical time frame, like I said, right now it's pretty backed up, and so they're working through them as fast as they can. But once the traffic study piece is done, a lot of it depends on the neighborhood's ability to kind of decide what they actually are open to or not, which surprisingly takes longer than some people would think it would. So it just kind of depends.
To build on that question, what about red light cameras? Is a big factor in?
That has been a topic of discussion, and I will get back to you on the specifics of that conversation so that I don't misspeak, because I know that that was a conversation more had in engineering, but that definitely did come up in conversation and was a conversation that was had. So I'll get back to you with that and the cities that you mentioned.
And I think part of the conversation too, Alex, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are kind of like the device and technology pieces of it, like, speed humps and or traffic cameras and the actual, the infrastructure pieces of it, like trying to create roadways that are accommodating to all types of travelers, right? We're a big car-centric community, which, I acknowledge being a contributor to because I'm always in my car, but also kind of some of the education pieces of it, right? And having these conversations and using different tools and resources and campaigns to also change the mindsets of people, because it's really ain't easy to change signs. It's really hard to change behavior, and I'm a witness to that. I had to pay a speeding ticket the other day, right? Because I know what the sign says, but I know what my behavior is. And so pairing that with educational resources as well to really, like I said, affect people's mindsets about, and even in the conversations, that we have around the infrastructure pieces, right? People like being in their car. And when we start to, you went through it on Cumberland and on Magnolia and everywhere, when we start to think about resetting infrastructure, sometimes that takes a lot of work with the public to prepare people for what that's gonna look like actually.
That makes sense. So, but right over to your point about mindset, I know what the speed limit says. But I know that a speed bump will slow me down faster than a sign, right?
Yep.
And then the other question, so just be honest.
Suspension issue
Oh.
with cars.
Yeah.
For sure.
When people put in a request, is it first come, first served? Or based on the traffic study, do you look and say, oh wow, well this particular area is receiving this many speed complaints or this
Right.
many.
So the traffic studies, and I don't wanna misspeak because I'm not over the neighborhood traffic safety program. And we can arrange to have somebody come and talk about that program at a different time that can go into more detail. So the applications themselves, really, the application is saying, we are interested in traffic calming in our community. The first step of that is a speed study. And so sometimes there's a speed study and the answer is, there's not actually, like it may feel like there's an issue in your community and we understand why you feel that way, but based on the speed study, it's not necessarily justified to install these measures, and that's when we look at, is there something else we can do? But, so the applications are kind of processed in application order. And then based on the speed study, that determines whether or not devices are installed or something else happens.
And just quickly, so the speed study is it based on speeding tickets?
I don't
You
know,
don't know.
no, I know it's not solely based on speeding tickets. I think they come out to the community and they
Oh, and
observe
they're
how
kind of
traffic is
reserved,
flowing.
okay.
Yeah, and I don't know, what I don't know is like the length of time for which they do that. I don't know how long the speed study process actually takes, how often they come out to observe. Those would be questions kind of for engineering. They can answer those a little bit better. But no, it's not based on like the number of speeding tickets. They actually observe how traffic is flowing over time in a community.
Good, that's good to know. I am interested in if there's data on this or information on speeding tickets by maybe zip code or even if it's broader than that of area. Because I do wonder sometimes, I said people keep speeding, but we get away with it because nobody's gonna stop us.
Well, and in part, and that's a big part of why the speed, I mean, one, just watching traffic over time is a better indicator of other than speed stuff. But we also have a very real reality in terms of our enforcement capabilities, that we have a force that's down over 3 dozen officers probably.
Okay.
And so our ability to just sit and
Right.
stop cars is greatly diminished. But yeah. So,
And then as cars, we have technology now too that kind of lets us know
Tells
when
things
there's a detection.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Question, this might be out of bounds, I'm just asking in relation to like pedestrians and how people getting to these places. Or could you maybe find out with some of this data, if any of it is connected around like bus stops, like location of bus stops, like people getting to and or lack thereof potential bus stops?
Absolutely.
Or seating for bus stops, I would say. I think that might be interesting just to know. Like I said, I don't know, I might just be saying this, and it's nothing to kind of look into, but just a random thought / question, I would say.
No, that's a great insight. That came up a lot in the community workshops about like people being deterred, especially users with mobility issues and disability, that it was difficult for them to even access bus stops. And so that was a big part of the conversation of like broken sidewalks, like how does your path to get from point A to point B affect whether you use a bus versus maybe trying to walk or just calling someone to have them drive you or driving in your own car. So I do think that that's a very good point, and I'll definitely look into that for you for sure.
I also want to commend you for the presentation, especially the highlights of equity. It's really interesting to see how a lot of the federal programs and a lot of federal dollars are looking at the Justice 40 initiative. And so looking at the ways in which a lot of the federal funds and dollars are connected to specifically addressing and like assisting disadvantaged communities. And so I want to highlight you for that portion of your presentation.
All right, so just to say thanks to both our speakers today, and that really was an excellent presentation. I appreciated the thoroughness and the style. We're going to, are there any other questions? Good?
Thank you all.
Great. All right.
One more thing, if you have any questions that you wanna get to us, please, just send it to Tiffany or, and we'll address those questions.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now moving forward toward our task force business, and we want to start with our strategic framework. So,
Yeah. Good evening. I have what they call an outside voice. So first and foremost, again, thank you all for your participation back a few months ago in the retreat process, and really starting to dig into what the work of the task force could look like going forward, and thinking about how we can begin to attach some strategies to the investment areas that you all had identified in your previous retreat. And you know, we really wanted to dig into creating at least an initial framework to give us a place to work from in terms of both the task force work in terms of advocacy and education for our community, and what we are looking to encourage and support, but also for us from a staff standpoint, in terms of thinking of especially Ms. Toombs' work with trying to identify grant opportunities and as opportunities from community partners come before the task force for support, thinking about how it fits into the framework that we have developed. We know that at least the initial life of the task force is 10 years. This is not intended to be a 10-year long document, right? This is a starting point, and the hope is that as we dig into this work, it will be an evolving document, but that this will at least give us a place to start from. I know that several of you all were able to provide at least some initial feedback in our committee meetings last month. Was that last month? Yeah, last month. Wow. Year's almost over, friends. And our committee meetings last month, and we tried to go ahead and incorporate some of that into the revised document that I believe you all received earlier this week from Mrs. Davidson and Ms. Toombs. And so hopefully you've had a chance to look over it some, and we would love to hear any additional feedback, any thoughts, any concerns, where you may see some opportunities for additional build out. So with the goal of taking this feedback back again and revisiting the document to try to incorporate as best we can, and bringing hopefully what will be a final document to you all in December that will hopefully be satisfactory for you all to vote on and give us a framework to start the year, start 2024 freshman. So
I do have some notes and thoughts, and I'll bring them with me.
okay.
So we still have an investment committee meeting next Monday, right?
Yes.
So I will.
Yes, and there'll be opportunity in those meetings to talk a little bit more about it as well. Thank you. No worries. And just to avoid the awkward silence as you all are looking at it, the way in which we broke it down, obviously we have kind of the overall vision and mission of the task force, and some initial, kind of laying out the initial purpose associated with those. And so thinking about how we are identifying and researching and reviewing strategic solutions and some specific action items to support that, which includes the State of Black Knoxville report, how we are utilizing data around disparities, and developing working groups. So one of the things that we talked about before, we have subcommittees, but now that we have some strategies, and hopefully we'll have some strategies and action items upon adoption of a framework, whether or not there's space to build out who all is involved in those committees and kind of thinking about are there community partners and other folks who are not necessarily on the task force that could be a resource through a committee structure to get some of this work done so that it doesn't all fall on other people who are already very, very busy. And then under each of the key investment areas, identifying some desired outcomes, which you see there in kind of the bronzish color, we'll call it. This is time what you have. I don't need to judge today. With some strategies, and then a few action items, one to several action items under each strategy. So that's how we try to break it up to make it palatable.
One thing I want to bring up, I know that K-Tech don't know much about their background.
Mhm.
K-Tech is the chamber.
Yes.
That partnership, yes. So I don't think I'll be able, I sent an email out earlier, I don't think I'll be able to attend that workshop.
Mhm.
But, and I don't know who's leading it to where we can get that study. I think that might be a good study for us to get. A little info about it. K-Tech and the Knox Chamber did a gap survey, did a survey around technology gaps for workforce, for workforce improvement, I would say. And they're having their results tomorrow. From 8:30 to 9:30, they're like inviting the higher education institutions and some of the educational side of things. And then 10:30 to 11:30, they're doing the workforce resources where they're going to talk about the study. So I think just it would be good for us to try to get our hands on that study, so we can see what work have they done, just to see in Knoxville in general where we lack from tech skills, and maybe we can gear up a conversation or something. I don't know, to see if there's more data we can pull from like the people of color, minority standpoint. Or they might have to present it. I don't know.
Yeah, and when you said that, what I think to your point, what wasn't really clear is like, okay, we know that they're going to present it, but it wasn't really clear like if it was going to be made public after they present it, or who holds this information and kind of will be the owner of it. But I agree. I think that would be really valuable information to have, especially as we think about workforce equity and how we are approaching workforce equity and making sure that we're preparing people for livable, jobs with livable wages, and that we're preparing them for the jobs that are coming, for the jobs that are here and the jobs that are coming, not the jobs that were here 15 years ago.
Quick question.
Yes.
If you use an acronym, what is the acronym?
I don't know.
K-Tech.
Yeah, K-Tech. I don't know much about them. So I'm on the chamber's newsletter for work, and they just sent out information maybe like about a month ago about the survey that happened.
So spell the acronym itself.
Literally K-Tech, K, like the letter K, and then Tech, T-C-H.
Oh, just okay.
Yeah, so.
It's not so something entrepreneurial center. You're talking about the one that is next door to the chamber.
I don't,
Yes.
no, this hasn't said that it was an entrepreneurship center.
Okay.
It looks like it might be the Knoxville Technology Council.
Okay,
It looks like that might be the.
okay. But yeah, but I know it was K-Tech and the Knox Chamber
Okay.
in partnership that did this technology technology survey, technology skill set gap survey.
One, and I mean there are plenty here. Obviously, we want y'all's feedback and input on all areas of this, but especially you brought up the workforce equity piece, and under workforce equity, the last strategy in terms of improving workforce readiness, and I know we talked about inviting representatives from our school system to talk more about the 865 Academy. But for those of you all who may already have some familiarity with that, thinking about how we can build out that, because we know that we want to collaborate with them in some way, but we are a little murky on what that collaboration needs to look like. And so if you have insight or input on 865 Academy and some suggestions on how to complete the sentence where the ellipses are, that would be really helpful too.
Maybe it would be 865 Academy in Region 5. Maybe we can start there in terms of Region 5 and then broaden it out if we need to. And that takes in several schools in, our
In Center City.
district one, and some others, but definitely those. That would be my suggestion.
Where are you referring to in this?
On the last
Last
page,
page.
under workforce equity, the last strategy, improve workforce readiness, the first bullet, collaborate with Knox County Schools, 865 academies to do something important.
Yeah.
We just need to
Yeah.
decide what that is.
And I'm being on the steering committee and I'm kind of reviewing, and I'll give it some more thought, but I will say, I do know that ensuring equitable access
Yes.
is a key phrase when I look at the structure and what's provided to schools across Knox County. When they first started, it was you're going to partner with businesses close to you. So, all right, so, and so then, they loosened that a bit, but I think that it's worth putting something on paper, and evaluating how that flushes out to make sure, as you said, that our kids only have access to current and past jobs versus those like cybersecurity, those things that are on the edge, and just by, you're not in a neighborhood close to one of those businesses, or you might not have people coming in from those areas, so that's one
Making note of
phrase. And I'll probably have some more notes.
Okay. But yeah, as you review it,
I was just gonna throw Georgia was asking to talk about what we talked about a little bit earlier in terms of small business development and entrepreneurship with the Miller 3. Oh, is that?
Well, I'm tied in.
Oh, we're gonna tie it into that. Ball from the bus.
Back it up.
Not under, it's back to
So I want to thank all of those that are supporting the task force in getting us to this place.
Yes.
I think it took a lot of collaboration. We all have a passion for what we're doing, but to be able to bring it to a form or a format that we can present and understand and help us move forward with grant writing, narrow it down. You know, I think we went from saving East Knoxville to saving the world. But the good thing about that, and I think the reason a lot of us are still here is because of our passion and commitment. But this is truly a thing of beauty, if I must say. And I'm very, very grateful to have this moving forward and to be able to tie into future conversations. Anybody that comes in, anybody that wants to present or get our support, we have something now that says, yes, it must tie to this.
and I'll say, Ms. Toombs and Mrs. Davidson and Mrs. Ferran have worked diligently and tirelessly on this document. But again, we could not have put this together without you all's vision, without you all's input, without you all's expertise and knowledge. And so hopefully it reflects where the task force wants to go. And thank you for that. And if you have additional feedback, I know we'll talk about it some in committees next week, but so that we can have some time to update, make any updates. If you could get that to us by the first meeting, that'll give us a week before the next meeting. If you could, this is the first Friday, if you could get that to us by December 1st, that would be great, and that'll give us a week to incorporate it, play with the document, and bring you something, send you something before the meeting, and then come to the next meeting in December with the updated document.
And for those that, like me, needed to update their calendar, we are having our committee meetings now following our task force meetings, so that all of this that we are gathering, talking about during the task force meeting, instead of waiting, doing it on the front end, we do it immediately after while it's still fresh, and we can plan appropriately for the actual next task force meeting. So just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. May not have been. Okay. All right, so we're going to move, Mr. Underwood, sharing information on the Black Business Directory, please.
You didn't have to bring some screen it up online.
Oh.
Copies.
Two.
This is the actual website.
Yeah, that was an individual, say, Damon Ross.
Yeah.
And they did an article on him, and he told, I'm not trying to promote his run for Madison County Commission, but he has put together the Black Business Direction. As we talk about our plan, particularly the investment area, of increased Black-owned businesses and employees, I just wanted to throw this out there, maybe we bring Mr. Rawls in, not in the political space, but just to have a dialogue with him as far as helping to strategize that piece of what we're talking about doing. So that's why I'm gonna bring that up. And then secondarily, what Dale was talking about is some of us were present when we did the disparity study presentation the other day, post the disparity study, Miller 3, I think it's the name of the company, is that right?
Yes.
Focused on particularly as part of the study, the Black business component of it, components to it. But maybe getting that expertise into the room as well. I did have a question for the lawyers, city lawyers, as far as what is the plan as far as, they did that presentation. It hadn't gone to council yet, right?
I don't think so.
All right, so when is that gonna happen?
You know, I'm not sure on that. I can get you a timeline for the next meeting. I may be able to find it online here, but I do not know off the top of my head, but I'll certainly look into that.
All right, and then another part of that question is, they recommended some very aggressive race-conscious remedies. Is the city gonna do that?
So that is a little bit of a tricky question given the recent Harvard law case that came out from the Supreme Court, which definitely was a, let's just say a mixed bag of information. But I do not know what the answer is to that question, but again, I certainly can talk with LaKenya and with Charles Swanson, our law director, and report back.
When are they gonna make that decision?
I don't know, I'll have to look that up, and maybe I can find it here in our agenda information system, I'm not sure, but I will definitely take a look.
Yeah, if you can give it to Tiffany, you can give it to us.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
And in addition to that, as they're making the decisions on these actions, I like to know if it's an all or nothing. So
Sure.
if there are certain strategies, if you can do some, even if some are stalled, is it gonna stall the whole thing?
Right.
And then we end up back in the same place. The other thing, if we brought up Visit Knoxville, I believe if you go to Visit Knoxville, it'll say support Black businesses and there's a list. So I think it would be, but I'm not sure that list is as current as Damon's, but I do think him having such intricate work with the Black businesses would be good for him to come. But those lists should kind of match. But I was happy to see that at least if you're going to visit Knoxville, because a lot of people actively seek ways of all races to support minorities when they go visit a city. That list is there, but I'm not sure it's as current as his. Okay, so we have it on the agenda to invite him, I guess, or on the list.
Yes, well, we will add it,
Add it
as a recommendation from the committee that we would like to have David Rawls come and talk about the Black Business Directory. And I think in
Is there also data from the chamber regarding Black, minority, women-owned businesses? I'm wondering, the average longevity of a Black-owned business, in Knoxville. Is there information like that available?
I'm actually looking up, that should be highlighted to some extent in the data report that I'll be sharing with you all next meeting.
Okay.
I was able to get some context and some details regarding Black businesses, so the data that I have so far been able to obtain, I'll be sure to present some of that.
And then to check the Tennessee Small Business Development Center, sometimes they have that information more readily available than the chamber. Tennessee Small.
Who was
They're
there?
located in the chamber.
Who was?
Tennessee Small Business
Oh, okay.
Development Center.
Okay, and they usually track that type of information.
I'm actually having lunch with Mike Odom this
Okay.
week, and I'm the board chair of the chamber this year, so it's the specific ask. I'd be glad to share this with them if it's okay with the rest of the folks on the task force. Is the ask for a sense of what the data is showing, or is it really also about at the same time, what is the chamber doing, and how can we partner together? I'll be glad to
Yes,
relay
sir.
ask to him. Yeah, I would assume it'd be a little bit of both. You just
Yeah, a little bit of both, and I'll tell you the nature of the question where I'm going with it is trying to figure out where it's comes apart, where it falls apart.
Yeah.
Is it that it's not so much that you can't start one? What's the hiccup? Is it a 3-year piece, something that happens that we find a trend among small businesses that prevents them from being successful? Or maybe it's such a variety of things that we don't have a trend. But I'm just curious about the average, we have some that have been long-standing.
Sure.
And interestingly enough, a lot of those are from people who, and we've had this discussion, who are kind of born and raised in the community that they opened a business. So I don't know if they have more will and drive to keep it going because of that connection. But I'm just curious, because if we want to support small business, to understand where that breakdown happens and when, might be helpful.
Madam President, my experience in working with the Tennessee Small Business Development Center, and I work with them two stands, is basically finances and administration.
Right.
You can break it down to those two things, and you can break it down to where they may be located as, on down the line. But those two things, finances and administration of the businesses.
So is it a point when that becomes the issue that it's too overwhelming for them to overcome?
When we had empowerment zone money, I put many businesses put them into business. It wasn't so much a problem in getting them into the business, but once they were in the business, did they have the finances to actually keep the business going, and also administrative type
Right.
stuff. So it's not, I don't think it's the wherewithal for them not to run a business, because most of the time they can. But it's really what we would always do, try to bring in the technical assistance to help them keep the business going and show them the marketing,
Right.
the advertising, those things that keep your business running.
business plan, you might even say too.
Yeah, they had to have a business plan before they got in the business, especially with the empowerment zone. But even prior to that, what would happen if they have their business plan? What would happen if they ran into some of those problems? What would you do? And that should show that in that business plan as well. But definitely those were the top two.
So I'll say, even to add on to that, like the 3 roots, what we run across is from the managing their money to make it take a little bit deeper. It's cash flow, managing the actual month-to-month, week-to-week cash flow. Most of the time, businesses coming to us don't have any type of a budget, whether that's coming from an actual accounting system or just simply an Excel sheet that just tells us what's coming in and what's going out.
And no projections?
No, projections is a whole nother level. and rarely see, just in general, like business in general, much less when you take it down to people of color, businesses of color. Because most businesses do fail in their first 5 years. It's because of lack of cash flow, management, and then, like you said, the operations piece of not having like operating procedures in place. So if they get sick one day, they got their cousin stepping in. Cousin don't know what to do because nothing's been documented. So that's another day or two of lost revenue. But oftentimes the biggest issue is people will come to us for loans or equity investments, and they have no type of financials. And the
Okay.
business has been operating maybe for a couple of years. We're like, it's not like we can.
So-
Yeah.
I know this could be a whole meeting in itself, so people have the ideas and they know how to do what they do. They know the business, but the administrative piece, becomes a glitch at some point. And so my question, I guess, the study is, the information is out there, and there are supports for it, why aren't people taking advantage of that? And how can we encourage people, or maybe it's something on the, I'm not sure, I'm just trying to think through.
Even the Knoxville Co-Starters program in
Right.
area, TC might have some good information for us.
But why don't people go, I get,
Cause you know, TC, he holds people accountable.
Right.
I think a lot of people don't wanna be held accountable to that.
Okay.
Like, I have to be on time on these Saturdays, I have to show up to a certain percentage of these workshops. So it's like even that those small items that start separating successful entrepreneurs and people who just have a business that's running them, I would say.
okay,
Is like some of those small things, which just come down to the behavior of, like we talked about earlier with speed bumps.
mindset,
Yep, mindset. You know, and so it's like, how do we tap into that mindset? Because if I'm more like I want to manage my business finances the same way I manage my personal finances. If I'm able to pay personal bills, I'll take the same mindset to my business. Because there isn't much of a separation
right.
when you are the business. And most of our black businesses are service-based businesses. So yeah.
Well, maybe we can, as a task force, help out with that as far as, I mean, I run a business, I'm not an accountant. I have Xero, which is accounting software. So, you know, those companies that come in or that come to Root for a loan, like, hey, sign up for this accounting software, have a track record of financials, and then come back to me. You know, because that's
That's what we have to get people to do.
That's what we have to get people to do, and maybe
there, it's like, why?
right. And you know, maybe that's something as we get deeper into the task force and helping these, you know, create this foundation in their communities that be part of it. Hey, we're going to help you with you know, maybe a year of these because it really helped me with my business. You know, to be able to look back at my financials and create projections. I didn't do it; the software did it. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think, sorry, this is the task force discussion, not to interject. But I think a good opportunity as we think about some of our action items in our proposed plan, and we think about developing out some of these working groups. Just sitting here, we have talked about several partners or people who have some level of experience, expertise, you know, in helping to support small businesses in this way that we could hopefully bring to the table to help us understand what are some of the gaps, how do we get this information out to our community better. And so as we are making note as we talk about who some of these partners are so that we can come back to this hopefully at some point and bring some of these folks to the table.
Oh, that was one of my questions, as you asked us to review this and take notes and bring that, and I know we'll have a discussion. I was gonna ask task force members if you know someone that can either inform the topic or support some of the actions of the topic to bring those as well. Since you're looking at it, while you're looking at it, it'll probably spark, oh, I know this person or this tool has been helpful, and we can bring that at one time to move that forward. Do we have any announcements from task force members?
Oh, I have some announcements.
Okay.
The NAACP Gala will be on Saturday at the Change Center at 7 p.m. Fireside chat with
Tamika Mallory.
thank you, Tamika Mallory. I was gonna say to somebody else, Tiffany something. And
Everybody's a Tiffany.
So that is on Saturday. Tickets are $75, and you get a year's membership with the Knoxville branch NAACP if you pay that $75 for the ticket. Then the Burlington Business District Association meeting is December the 5th at 5 p.m. at Greater Warner, and this should be a very good meeting. We're talking about a lot of things there, but the Burlington Business District area. And you know that the streetscape, is gonna start somewhere in the springtime. So a lot of things will be happening there. But, the city, of Knoxville, David Brace and others will be there, so wanted to make sure that you all had that information. And then one last thing, Christmas in Burlington will be December the 16th in the Burlington community from 12 to 5, and that should be a fun time for the community on that day as well.
You know what's on that, Burlington meeting on the 5th?
5 p.m. at Great
Thank
Warren.
Could you send those out as a reminder? Or ask Tiffany, would you send those out as a reminder? I did speak with Tiffany, and when you brought up the NAACP gala, it reminded me, we've talked before about having representation at some of these events that are significant or represent particularly the African American community, but sometimes we think about it too late. Like I didn't think about it in time. Like we did the 8th of August, we decided, okay, those that can go, it would be great, they had our name up there and such. This would have been another event similar to that. But as a group, collectively, if we can help think about, oh yes, this would be a great opportunity, and then we can get tickets, and I consider getting tickets to the event, us attending an investment in that event and supporting that. So, and by the way, I'm winning an award if anybody is coming Saturday.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, it's not really an announcement, just on the community. As we've got this plan, I would just be hopeful that we could zero in on something and have the success. We've now been asked this for like 2 years.
I think,
and so are we spreading ourselves too thin? We want to do a lot of good for a lot of people, but we're really not focused on getting a win.
This is what I imagine. I would love a win, but this is what I imagine as the next win, is that we take, and why I want you to bring the list, go ahead and make these subcommittees or these action groups or whatever, what do we call them? Are they subcommittees?
I think in the document we call them working groups, we can
Working
call them
groups.
subcommittees.
We can call them whatever we
have,
wanna call them, but I.
subcommittees now, so we can just stay with
Cause work,
subcommittees.
okay. Bringing those groups together, I think will be tangible and also bring people into the work with some buy-in, and they will start creating some action. I think that's a win. First of all, I think this document is a win to be able to narrow down all the things that we talked about, but creating those working groups so that they start, and there are actions on here. And I could see if you're saying like, let's pick an action that's low hanging fruit and let's get that done.
Or maybe just, we got different investment areas.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just concentrating our collective efforts
On one,
on one investment area and try to do that first.
okay.
But that's right.
Then, I think when we have our next discussion, if we have a recommendation for which one, but I do think we still start thinking about how we can build capacity by bringing more experts and more people who really have a focus on a particular area, allow them to do that, but I don't disagree. So we can just kind of think about that.
I think that was one of the things we were keeping in mind in curating this list. Thankfully, we have, through the national agencies again, through our cohort, I was actually able to, the sea change report that I got to show for the folks who were there at the strategy sessions that we had. A lot of that was like smaller hanging fruits from that document, so successful, smaller items that were able to work in New Orleans. Obviously, Tennessee and New Orleans are two very different spaces, and so that is one of the things that we're keeping in mind when curating this document, like what are some smaller wins along with some more long-term objectives and wins as well. And so if we as a collective want to decide on which approach to take, that's completely fine. But that was something that we're keeping in mind.
Yeah, I also want to follow you on that philanthropic conference you went to with the heavy hitters. What was your takeaway? Were there some opportunities here?
Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities. I think in that sense, and I'd like, well, if you're open to it, I don't mind having one-on-one.
Yeah, let's do that, but we've been here a long time.
Right, yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was a lot of
circle back,
insights.
please.
So our homework in reviewing the document, seeing 30 recommendations, if it's clear and states as we intended. Also, who could support, who has the expertise, tools, strategies to support some of our actions, and then, based on your recommendation, what do we wanna do? I mean, like, pick one, get it done, right? And, let's come to an agreement on what we can tackle. I see some things that probably are close to being checked off the list, already, but let's do that. Any other announcements?
So
Okay,
is that like, what we need to turn in by December 1st?
December.
yes, but we do have committee meetings in between, but by December 1st, yes, start thinking about.
And just me going through this document, I could see how we could tie each one of the, I don't know if we're calling subcommittees or sub-interest groups, maybe a list, kind of like the way we did with the improvement workforce readiness. Just like what you said, community programs is already in place, and maybe a SME as subject expert with each one of these, and maybe even with the low-hanging fruit, a date where we can propose a policy with also a budget tied to that we can submit to the council. I don't know what everybody think about that, but also a quick question, Ms. Toombs. Is there a way, and I don't know if this document already exists, maybe quarterly informational handout for the task force of what grants we have actually been granted, the dollars that are restricted to those grants, and just the informational kind of running of what we have, and also our operating budget was coming in. Maybe something quarterly would be great for us to just kind of know where we're at. I don't know if the task force thinks about that.
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
in fact, there has been something recently developed, I'm gonna look over, but that question has come up. We do, we lose track. If I don't have it in front of me, or I don't have something to reference, I don't call. But I knew that we consider not only the grants that we directly apply for, but if we supported the application of a grant, I think it needs to go somewhere. We need to know all that we touch. So I think it's a reasonable request. I think quarterly is more than reasonable. And so I don't know if that needs to.
Yeah, I was about to say, I have that information on hand. Tiffany Davidson and I were having a discussion about how to go about having easily accessible documents to you all. So whether that's like a Dropbox, a OneDrive, etc., to where you all can actually see and access a lot of the documents that we're referencing. And so, like I said, that's been a conversation, and we can go about making that more formalized. But in the meantime, I can send you all an up-to-date list of investments, list of what else is it? A list of investments.
And people who have presented.
People who have presented, along with the amount of grants that we have, and then I can definitely give you some more information about the operating budget. So, yeah, thankfully we have it available.
So it doesn't have to be extensive, but just so
A
we can
snapshot
a
is-
snapshot is what I'm saying.
Anything else? All right, so I do know someone signed up for public forum, but I don't see them. Okay.
I just want to ask what if Stefan White and him sending that dissertation, I was just wondering how we would address that. And I know he's not here, of course, tonight, but there should be some, way that we address his concern, even if he didn't come. He sent that in, and we need to have some kind of formalized answer.
So there have been multiple communications with Mr. White, both through Ms. Toombs
Okay.
and through the law department regarding the document that has been circulating. And and the fact that at this point, I think from an Office of Community Safety and Empowerment standpoint and a task force standpoint, as best I can tell with the proposal that he is attempting to present, those are not currently services that the task force has decided or the city has decided that they are pursuing. And if and when such services would be pursued, we would have to follow appropriate protocols and procedures in terms of putting out an RFP and people submitting proposals. And then I know that Law has had some communication with him regarding how that proposal should be formatted, and that perhaps the way in which it's currently formatted is not the correct way to do that. And so there have been multiple communications with him regarding that.
So
Just
that's.
to add what LaKenya said as well, I know that the proposal that was maybe just a couple months ago that was submitted to you all does bear the name of Ron Mills, our deputy director on it.
Right.
That is not a document that Ron Mills or anyone in our law department drafted, so just to throw that out for clarification.
And that's what I was gonna ask about. Right, so this is just a proposal, this is not anything that's been officially.
But it's not an original proposal, right? It's like
I think
bits and
what's
pieces
being
from.
attempted is a proposal. What's being presented is a draft contract.
Right.
That no one has authorized
Okay, that's
in
what,
the
because
state.
Ron's name is on, that's.
Correct.
What-
Yeah. We have not had any
Okay.
role in that document being drafted and presented, and I think Law has had some multiple conversations with him about.
Our contracts, of course, are subject to the Tennessee Public Records Act, so anybody could request a copy of a contract and, of course, kind of go from there. But as LaKenya was saying, we do have a process with our procurement and finance departments. There's either an ITB, an invitation to bid, or an RFP that goes out. Even if the task force wanted to, we couldn't just have someone bring in a contract and say, okay, we're gonna recommend approval of adoption for city council. So he is more than, able to apply for our finance department at the direction of the task force, puts out an ITB or an RFP. He is welcome to submit proposals, and he can be evaluated just like everybody else who submits any kind of, proposal for services or anything like that. But, that is not something that, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse, if that makes sense.
Not to belabor the points when we get out of there, but is he asking for a political action committee, what was it?
It's very unclear.
Do we vote to adjourn? Okay, before we do that, I do have a question, but speaking about being responsive, as I see emails come in where people have made a comment online, who's responding to those? Or I don't think I'm supposed to alone, but I don't think, I haven't seen a response, but I see them periodically come in. And I don't want people not to trust that as an avenue for sharing information, asking questions. So I'm just curious, and maybe it's not today, but we need to figure out.
We can check on that. So I don't have access to that platform. As a matter of fact, when I heard that y'all were using that, so for example, I came from serving on Park and then as a director, and I did not even know that this platform existed. And so I'm not as familiar with the platform, but we can check on who all has access to it and who needs.
Does everybody get an email? Yeah, so we all get an email when someone makes a comment, a question, whatever the case, but I feel like we need to respond. And is it an automatic response? Thank you for your.
I don't know, I can't speak to the.
I feel like we at least need that.
Yeah, and that's fair, right? I know recently, right, we all got the notification when the person came up to, they responded, they filled in the request to speak for public forum. Like anytime that happens, we'll get notifications. I'm not sure, like LaKenya said, if there's a direct response, like thank you for signing up to speak. I'm not completely sure if that's the case.
But sometimes it's not just request to speak.
Sometimes it's questions.
True,
yeah.
That's true. So we'll get clarification on how the platform, like I said, I'm just not familiar with the
Okay.
platform. It's not
I just
something that
have it,
I'm
we just wanna be responsive, whatever that means.
No, okay. Does the task force want to respond, or is the idea that we're taking in input from the community as we operate as a task force?
I think that's okay, then we just need to state that. Like, I think we need to just let them know that anything that you submit here is under consideration of the task force. Thank you for your input, something like that.
Just an acknowledgement.
Right, just an acknowledgement, yeah.
Yeah, I think you gotta be careful. Acknowledgement of receipt and appreciation is one thing, but you can't set yourself up for an endless dialogue with folks. So really, any of the public forums are for us to hear from people, but not be queried necessarily. That comes up in all the boards I've been around.
And then when they send them, we don't talk about them necessarily in our meetings either. So they might need to be added to the agenda. If it's something that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Something valid, incredible, yes.
So I guess that's a actual question I'm posing to the task force, is the idea for the public forum to address these, or are we just accepting and as input as we operate?
That's a good question. I think that might be it too. That might answer the question of how do we maybe communicate out the responses if we don't have anyone for a public forum. Let me know.
So it's two things.
Just kind of communicate the questions that may have come the last month. I don't know.
I think the courtesy one is when we want to extend to acknowledge receipt. Two, I think if they say something, then, and it's credible, legit, you know, not like I have butterflies flying over my window, then we need to add it to the agenda for a discussion. And whether we respond to them with an answer, like I said, we don't want to get into a back and forth. If they watch the recordings, they'll see that that was a discussion or whatever, but they know it was received. So I think that's where we're, but if we think it needs to go beyond that, I think we try that first, just to see how that goes. And see, making sure, because we don't get that many now. I mean, I brought it up because I just saw them recently, and that was to sign up, but it did make.
But we always have the opportunity to ask them, even with a thank you, if you want to come and support your comments or questions, come to the public forum. You have, 3 minutes.
That would be a
to
good addition
talk.
to the response, yeah. And then they don't expect a response based on what they said.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So are we going to draft a general response in that and is somebody else?
That's what I'm
Is
asking.
gonna be,
I think that's what they're gonna
be
say.
the respond, or do we have
Let us figure out how the platform works. Cause the three of us don't, like, I'm hearing the conversation, I have never seen what y'all are talking about. I don't know how the platform works.
And we don't have our response, but
Yeah.
they'll let us.
And so we'll look at that and find out kind of internally what the platform's capabilities are, and then we can come back to you all and say, this is what we can do in terms of generating automatic responses, or, if it's based on the type of question, staff will either acknowledge that they have signed up for public forum, or, make sure that we add those comments if it's something specific to an item that would fit within the agenda or one of the investment areas, if it's something that needs to be talked about in committee or brought to the full body. We can check with you all about what that looks like, but I think the first step is for us to figure out what the platform even is and allows us to do. Because I can't speak intelligently about it because I have no idea what it is.
You
I
can
just wanna
still
make
draft
sure.
something, because whether it's automated or we have to copy and paste and hit send, we know we want a response, so we just don't know how to get it to them. So if you're volunteering to draft that kind of message, is that what you were saying?
I mean, I can, my concern, I want the community, we serve at the leisure of the community, I want there not to be black and white space there. The expectations on the front end that, hey, you're not necessarily gonna get a direct response from the task force, or you are based on this input or this question to the task force. That's the only thing I was trying to.
And that's why I said, let us figure out what the process is before we deal with that in the near term, because what my concern is that we are about to open the door for you or whoever it is to spend half of their time responding to people who just wanna have a conversation. I mean, we deal with that on we deal with it on a daily basis. They just wanna have a conversation about, it doesn't matter what, with anybody that, and so to make sure that I'm bouncing incomes. But so that we can figure out how to do it in a way that both accomplishes our goal of effectively engaging the community that we serve, but also doesn't dig us into a black hole of we don't know what.
Thank you.
So we'll get back with you all ASAP on what that'll look like.
I got choked up on the ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.